وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبض ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين آمنت بالله صدق الله العظيم. We are reciting chapter number 4 of the Qasidah today, inshallah. Al-Fasl al-Rabi' fi Mawlidihi alayhi salatu wassalam, regarding the birth of the noble messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Join me in sending salutations upon our noble messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم أبان مولده عن طيب عنصره يا طيب مبتدأ منه ومختتم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يوم تفرس فيه الفرس أنهم قد أنذروا بحلول البوس والنقم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم وبات إيوان كسرى وهو منصدع كشمل أصحاب كسرى غير ملتئم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم والنار خامدة الأنفاس من آسف عليه والنهر ساهي العين من
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
وساء ساوة أن غادت بحيرتها ورد واردها بالغيظ حين ظني.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
كأن بالنار ما بالماء من بلل حزنا وبالماء ما بالنار من ضرم.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
والجن تهتف والأنوار ساطعة والحق يظهر من معنى ومن كلم.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
عموا وصموا فإعلان البشائر لم تسمع وبارقات الإنذار لم تشم.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
من بعد ما أخبر الأقوام كاهنهم بأن دينهم المعوج لن يقوم.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
وبعدما عاينوا في الأفق من شهوب منقضة وفق ما في الأرض من صنم.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
حتى غدا عن طريق الوحي منهزم من الشياطين يقفو إثر منهزم.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
كأنهم هرابا أبطال أبراهة أو عسكر بالحصى من راهطيه رومي.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا
بعد تسبيح بباطنهما نبذ المسابح من أحشاء ملتقم
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We're still continuing with chapter number 24. We didn't complete this last time. Regarding, in fact, chapter number 25 regarding returning of amana and trust. So, the next hadith in this chapter is narrated by Sayyidina Abu Khubayb, Abdullah bin Zubair radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. He says, لما وقف الزبير يوم الجمل دعاني فقمت إلى جنبه. He says that on the day of the battle of Jamal, my father Zubair stood in the battlefield and he called me. So I went and I stood beside him. فقال يا بني إنه لا يقتل اليوم إلا ظالم أو مظلوم. He said, my son, none but a wrongdoer or the one who has been wronged. So zalim or mazloom. Either the oppressor or the oppressed will be killed today. وإني لا أراني إلا سأقتل اليوم مظلوما. He said, I think that today I'm going to be killed, I'm going to be martyred as a mazloom, as the one who's oppressed, who's wronged. وإن من أكبر همي لديني. He says that Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu ta'ala said to his son Abdullah, he said that my greatest fear, or the thing that worries me the most, is my greatest concern is my debt. And he asked his son, he said, أفترى ديننا يبقي من مالنا شيئا. He said, do you think that any of my wealth will remain after having fulfilled all of my debts? That once I've paid off all of my debts, will I have anything left over? ثم قال, and then he said, يا بني بع مالنا واقضي ديني. He said, in the event, this is his wasiyah, it's his will. So he said, he already said to him that I think I'm going to be martyred today. He said, if I am martyred, in that case, I want you to sell whatever was in my possession in order to pay off my debts first. وَأَوْصَى بِالثُّلُثِ, and he left a will, most probably a charitable donation or something given in a charitable cause, of up to 1/3 of his wealth. And this is the ruling as well in the Sharia, that when a person dies, whatever he leaves behind, number one priority is debts. If he has any debts, those debts will be paid off. Secondly, if he's left a will, a wasiyah, that will be executed within 1/3 of his estate. It is not permissible to make a will that goes beyond 1/3 of somebody's estate. And if someone does, that will only be executed up to 1/3 of his wealth. The rest of the 2/3 will be split up according to the laws of the Quran and Islamic inheritance. The rest of the 2/3, after the debts have been paid, after the will has been administered, the remaining wealth will then be distributed amongst the inheritors. So, he left a will of 1/3, وَثُلُثِهِ لِبَنِيهِ, and he left 1/3 to the children of Abdullah bin Zubair. So the narrator clarifies, he says, يعني لبني عبد الله بن الزبير يقول, and he said for them, ثلث الثلث, 1/3 of 1/3. So this is how these are the instructions that he gave. قال فإن فضل من مالنا بعد قضاء الدين شيء فثلثه لبنيك. So his wasiyah, his will was actually for his grandchildren, because in the presence of his son, his grandchildren would not have inherited. This is the rule according to Islamic law. Right? If the deceased has children, his grandchildren, his or her grandchildren will not inherit. So them not being inheritors, he left 1/3 to them as a will. And وَكَانَ وَلَدُ عَبْدِ اللَّهِ قَدْ وَازَى بَعْضَ بَنِي الزُّبَيرِ. So one of the narrators, Hisham, he mentions and he says that the children of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubair were equal to some of the children of Zubair. So at that time, Sayyidina Zubair had 9 sons and 9 daughters. So this is mentioned. So وَلَهُ يَوْمَئِذٍ تِسْعَةُ بَنِينَ وَتِسْعُ بَنَاتٍ. His children at the time before his martyr, he had 9 sons and 9 daughters. قال Abdullah, his son Abdullah bin Zubair, the narrator, he said, فَجَعَلَ يُوصِينِي بِدَيْنِهِ. He continued to advise me instruct me regarding his debt. ويقول, and he said, يا بني إن عجزت عن شيء منه فاستعن عليه بمولاي. This is a very important phrase in this hadith. Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu ta'ala, he said to his son Abdullah bin Zubair, he said, if in paying my debt you run out of money, so basically if my debt exceeds the value of the money that I've left behind, seek assistance from my master. Seek help and seek assistance from my master. قال فوالله ما دريت ما أراد حتى. Abdullah bin Zubair says, I swear by Allah, I did not know what my father was talking about. Because this word Mawla has many different meanings in the Arabic language. And predominantly, it's actually one of those words that has opposing meanings depending on the context. Mawla can mean master of a slave. Mawla can also mean a freed slave of somebody. So he's saying, ask my Mawla, ask my master. But he was never a slave. Nobody had set him free. So this didn't make any sense to Abdullah bin Zubair. He says, Wallahi, I didn't understand what my father was saying. وَيَقُولُ, and so he actually says, قُلْتُ, I asked, Ya abati, O father, man mawlak? Who is your master? Who is your mawla? Listen to this. Qala Allah. He said, the master I'm talking about is Allah. If you, in paying my debts, if you run out of money, if my estate does not exceed my debt, and you run out of money, seek help from Allah. So what happened? So Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu says, قال فوالله ما وقعت في كربة من دينه إلا قلت يا مولى الزبير اقضي عنه دينه فيقضيه. He said, my father, he did pass away. He was martyred. And he says, I started paying off his debt. And I did run into trouble from time to time. And whenever I could not put up the funds to pay off his debt to somebody, I raised my hands and I said, Ya Mawla Zubair, because his father had said to him, ask help from my Mawla. He said, Ya Mawla Zubair, O master of Zubair, pay off his debt for him. Fayaqdiyahu, and he says, every time Allah arranged for that debt to be paid somewhere. When I invoked upon Allah in this way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala arranged for that debt to be paid. Qala, فَقُتِلَ الزُّبَيْرُ. So he says, Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu anhu was martyred on that day. وَلَمْ يَدَعْ دِينَارًا وَلَا دِرْحَمًا. He left behind not one single dirham or dinar, gold or silver coin. He left no cash behind at all. And he says, illa ardeen, except that he had some property. He had some homes, he had some property. So minha al-ghabatu wa ihda ashara daran bil madinati wa daraini bil basra wa daran bil kufa wa daran bil masr. So he says that he had some land in Ghaba. He owned 11 houses, 11 properties in Medina. He owned 2 properties in Basra, 1 property in Kufa, and 1 property in Misr in Egypt. قال وإنما كان دينه الذي كان عليه أن الرجل كان يأتيه بالمال فيستودعه إياه فيقول الزبير لا ولكن هو سلف إني أخشى عليه ضيعة. So he says that he incurred, how did he incur these debts? How did he build up such a huge debt? He says that he incurred these debts in this way, that a man would come to him with some wealth and ask him to keep it as a trust for him, amana. So he would come to him and say, remember the chapter is, give back your amana, give back something that's entrusted to you. So here's the connection of the chapter. He says that people would come to my father and they would give him money, say, I want you to keep this for me, safekeeping as an amana, as a trust. And he would say, no, I'm not going to keep it as a trust. Rather, this is a debt upon me. So he would take it and he would say that this will be a debt upon me, as if I'm borrowing it from you. And so he says that my reason for not accepting it as a trust is that I fear that I will be destroyed. Right? So it's out of fear of violating the trust, violating the amana, he would say that inni akhsha alayhi dai'a, I fear that I will be reproachable for it. This is the level of care that he took with regards to taking an amana, and how important it is to give back something that has been entrusted to you in the exact same position and condition it was in when it was left with you. He felt that that was too much of a burden. Even debt in of itself, look at how big this burden of debt was. Right? That how he's instructing his son to pay everything off, and eventually having to sell all of his properties and encountering a lot of difficulties to do this, but he'd never accept anything as a trust out of fear of falling foul of the rules and regulations of keeping a trust and maintaining a trust. He just wouldn't accept it. So, وَمَا لِيَ إِمَارَةً قَطُّ وَلَا جِبَايَةً وَلَا خَرَاجًا وَلَا شَيْئًا إِلَّا أَنْ يَكُونَ فِي غزو مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أو مع أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان رضي الله عنهم. So he says that in addition to this, he never bore the responsibility of any leadership. Like he never took a position of any kind of leadership or even collecting of taxes, of zakat, etc., and any other position of authority. But he always joined the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in jihad. And after him, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala, and then Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, and then Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu ta'ala. So he participated in jihad and in battles with all of them. So, قال Abdullah, his son, the narrator Abdullah bin Zubair, he says, فَحَسِبْتُ مَا كَانَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الدَّيْنِ فوجدته ألف ومئتي ألف فلقي حكيم بن حزام عبد الله بن الزبير فقال يا ابن أخي كم على أخي من الدين. He said, I calculated how much debt my father owed. And this is the debt. He wasn't borrowing money, but rather, if anybody gave him something for safekeeping, he was accepting it as a loan rather than a trust. He says, I calculated a total of 2,200,000. When he passed away, his outstanding dues were 2,200,000. Sayyidina Hakim bin Hizam radiallahu anhu, he says, he met Abdullah bin Zubair and he asked him, he said, nephew, tell me what dues my brother left behind, what debts did he leave behind? So he says that I didn't tell him the exact amount, right? And so, فَكَتَمْتُهُ, I hid it from him. وَقُلْتُ, and I said, مِئَةَ أَلْفٍ. I said 100,000, as opposed to 2,200,000. I said 100,000. And in response he said, فَقَالَ حَكِيمُ وَاللَّهِ مَا أُرَى أَمْوَالَكُمْ تَسَعُ هَذِهِ. I don't think your wealth will suffice to pay off this debt. Even though he was reducing it from 2,200,000 to just 100,000, he said, how are you going to do this? How are you going to manage? How are you going to pay this off? فقال Abdullah said, أَرَأَيْتُكَ إِنْ كَانَتْ أَلْفَيْ أَلْفٍ وَمِئَتَيْ أَلْفٍ. So the purpose wasn't to lie. If that it came into anybody's mind, why did he say the incorrect figure? The very next moment, he just wanted to gauge a reaction. After he gauged his reaction, then he told him, he said, what do you think if it was actually 2,200,000? Ask him the question. What if it was that? قَالَ مَا أُرَاكُمْ تُطِيقُونَ هَذَا. I don't think you're going to be able to pay this off. فَإِنْ أَجَزْتُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِّنْهُ فَاسْتَعِينُوا بِي. If you run into any difficulty in paying off his debt, come to me. I'll help you. So, قال وكان الزبير قد اشترى الغابة بسبعين ومئة ألف. Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu ta'ala had purchased the property in Ghaba by 100, he purchased it for 170,000. فباعها عبد الله بألف ألف. And so Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu, he purchased it for 170,000, but Abdullah bin Zubair sold it for 1,600,000. He made a handsome profit on it. ثم قام فقال, and then after he sold it for 1,600,000, he stood up and he said, من كان له على الزبير شيء. Is anyone outstanding any debts from my father Zubair? Does he owe anything to anybody? So, فَلْيُوَافِنَا بِالْغَابِ. I'm going to pay that off with the money that I've earned from selling his property in Ghaba. فأتاه عبد الله بن جعفر. So Abdullah bin Ja'far comes to him. وكان له على الزبير 400 ألف. He was owed 400,000 by Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu anhu. فقال لعبد الله. So he came to him and he said, إن شئتم تركتها لكم. If you want, leave it for you. Now this is also showing us the brotherhood within the Islamic community. Look at what Hakim bin Hizam radiallahu anhu said at the beginning. He had nothing to do with these debts. They weren't biological brothers. Now he said to him, nephew, this was just a turn of phrase. It's just like anyone older than us, we say uncle. So he wasn't related to him, he wasn't his biological brother. But he came to him and he asked him, do you need any help? If you run short of funds, come to me for help and I will help you. On the same hand, this person is owed 400,000. He's making an open announcement. Come, whoever is owed money by my father, I will pay off that debt. And he's saying, if you want, leave it for yourself. If you're not in a position to pay, don't. But Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu said, Halla. He said, no. قال فإن شئتم جعلتموها فيما تؤخرون إن أخرتم. He said, if you want to delay it, delay, pay me later. And Sayyidina Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anhu said, La, no. قال فاقطعوا لي قطعة. So Abdullah bin Ja'far radiallahu anhu, he said, if that's the case, you can cut off a plot of land for me. Right? I'll take a plot of land equivalent to that value. So he marked out that plot of land and he said, you can have this plot of land from here to here. So he paid him in terms of, rather than cash, he paid him off with a exchange of land. قال عبد الله لك من هاهنا إلى هاهنا. He said, here, take from here till here. فباع عبد الله منها فقضى عنه دينه. So he sold this to him, and using the money that he got from him, he paid off some more of his debt. وأوفى وبقي منها 4 أسهم ونصف. Now after paying off his debt, he was still left behind with some of that land. So he still had 4.5 shares of that land still remained. And so فقدم على معاوية. He came to Sayyidina Muawiyah رضي الله تعالى عنه وعنده عمرو بن عثمان منذر bin Zubair, Ibn Zam'a. They were all sitting with Sayyidina Muawiyah. And so Sayyidina Muawiyah said to him, Kam quvvimatil ghaba. What price was the land that your father owned at Ghaba? What was it valued at? How much did you get for it, or what was it valued at? قال كل سهم ب100 ألف. He said each share of that land was valued at 100,000. So each unit of land, in total he sold it for 1,600,000. So that means there would have been 16 units. He said each unit was valued at 100,000. كم بقي منها? So he asked, how much have you got left? قال 4 أسهم ونصف. I've got 4.5 units left. فقال منذر بن Zubair, he said, فقد أخذت منها سهما ب100 ألف. He said, I'll take one share from you for 100,000. Amr bin Uthman said, قد أخذت منها سهما ب100 ألف. I will take one share from you for 100,000. And Ibn Zam'a said, قد أخذت سهما ب100 ألف. I'll take one share for 100,000. So 3 shares they took from him, 300,000. And then Sayyidina Muawiyah, he said, كم بقي منها? How much have you got left? He said 1.5 unit. So قال قد أخذتها ب50 و100 ألف. He said, I'll take that from you for 150,000. So basically at 4.5 units, each unit had been valued at 100,000, and all 4.5 of them he sold in one gathering for 450,000. So after this he says, وَبَاعَ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ بْنُ جَعْفَرْ نَصِيبَهُ مِنْ مُعَاوِيَةَ ب600,000. So Abdullah bin Ja'far then sold his share to Sayyidina Muawiyah for 106,000 for 600,000. فَلَمَّا فَرَغَ ابْنُ الزُّبَيْرِ, when Abdullah bin Zubair had finished, مِنْ قَضَاءِ دَيْنِهِ, from paying off all the debts of his father, قَالَ بَنُو الزُّبَيْرِ, the rest of his brothers and sisters, the rest of the children of Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu ta'ala, they asked him, said, اِقْسِمْ بَيْنَنَا مِيرَاثَنَا, now distribute our inheritance between us. And so because the first priority was paying off the debts, so after the debts had been paid, the rest of his brothers and sisters, they said, give us our share from the inheritance. But what did he say? قال والله لا أقسم بينكم حتى أنادي بالموسم 4 سنين. Said, not yet. By Allah, I will not distribute his inheritance amongst you until I have made an announcement for 4 Hajj seasons, 4 years. And in the Hajj season, why? Because this was the where most traffic was, with people coming from out of the country, from everywhere. Said 4 years, I'm going to make a public announcement during the Hajj season to make sure that there's nobody left who our father owes any money to, before I distribute any of his inheritance. And so, Ala man kana lahu ala Zubairi daynun, I'm going to make the announcement, and take heed, anybody who's owed money by Zubair, فَلْيَأْتِنَا فَلْنَقْضِ, come to us and we will pay off his debts. فَجَعَلَ كُلَّ سَنَةٍ يُنَادِي فِي الْمَوْسَمِ, every single year he went out during Hajj season and publicly made this announcement. فَلَمَّا مَضَى 4 سِنِينَ, once 4 years had elapsed, قَسَّمَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَدَفْعَ الثُّلُثِ, he gave 1/3 according to his will, and the rest that remained he distributed amongst his siblings. وَكَانَ لِزُبَيْرَ 4 نِسْوَةٍ, Sayyidina Zubair radiallahu anhu, he had 4 wives. فَأَصَابَ كُلُّ امْرَأَةٍ 1,100,000. Now from here you can gauge, after paying off all the debts, after repaying all the amana, his wives, who had a joint share of the top of my head, 1/6, 1/8, they had a joint share in this. This was distributed amongst 4 of them, and each of his wives were given 10,000,000. So each of his wives received 1,200,000. That was just his 4 wives, 1,200,000 each, and then the remaining would have been shared between his sons and daughters. فَجَمِيعُ مَالِهِ, his total wealth that was distributed as inheritance was 50,200,000. But this was obviously, this was what it was valued at the time of his passing away. Now that's the last hadith in that chapter, and we'll conclude with that. A slightly long hadith with a lot of intricacies, a lot of numbers and people and individuals, but the main point being, just recapping, the main point being, the chapter was the importance of returning entrusted items. Look at the Prophet ﷺ, look at his own example. We all know, everybody knows, why did the Prophet ﷺ leave Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu behind on his bed on the night that he migrated, in order that he will wake up the next day and hand back the entrusted items that were given to him to the very same mushriks who were thirsty for his blood, it was their children, it was their relatives who were standing outside the house of the Prophet ﷺ with their swords unsheathed, ready to kill him that night. And yet Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu was waiting there so that he could go and return those entrusted items back to their rightful owners. But I'll finish with just, so he took this responsibility so seriously that he would never accept anything as a trust. Someone gave him something for safekeeping, he'd say, give it to me as a loan, I'll be liable for it, and I'll accept it as a loan, and when you want it back, I'll pay you back, but I'm not taking it as a amana, I'm not taking it as a trust. The rules being far more stringent, far much more responsibility and accountability to go with it. And so, very important then also that aspect of community, of how people were willing to forego their debts, how people were willing to step in and help someone pay off their debts, all points of learning. Last thing, just one thing that I'll add to that is that it's not just money and valuables that are entrusted to us. Every single breath that we take is an amana from Allah. The life that He's given us, the time that we have here, the obligations that we owe to Allah. Every namaz, every salah is a trust to Allah. Are we fulfilling that trust? Every fast in our lives that comes in Ramadan is a trust and amana to Allah. Are we fulfilling that trust and amana? On the day of judgment, when a person wakes, when he stands, when he's resurrected, it's mentioned in authentic narrations, sahih narrations, that a person will be resurrected, he will stand from his grave. He will not be able to move an inch. He will not be able to lift his foot until Allah has asked him, according to one hadith, 4 questions, according to one, 5 questions. Won't be able to move. He's standing in the position that he's resurrected in, and Allah will ask him, what did you do with your life? How did you spend your time? In particular, as a separate question, in one narration it mentions, how did you spend your youth, your young life? And then he will be asked, where did you earn your money from? And what did you spend it on? So these amanat, these trusts that we owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be asked about as well, and perhaps more stringent and something that's more applicable to us than this as well. And so remember that trust, amana, goes beyond just valuables that you're given for safekeeping. Rights of Allah are a trust. Rights of others upon you, rights of our parents, our spouses, our children, our community, our wider family, they are all an amana and trust upon us. We should be looking to fulfill that trust and amana. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Mawlana Muhammad wa barik sallim. Allahumma Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alayna innaka antas tawwabur rahim. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه